In the quiet hours before dawn, when the world sleeps and hearts awaken, there exists a book that has transformed civilizations, guided empires, and brought peace to billions of souls across 14 centuries. This is not just any book. This is the final revelation from the Creator of the heavens and the earth, preserved letter by letter, dot by dot, in a miraculous protection that no other scripture can claim. What you are about to discover will shake your understanding of history, challenge what you thought you knew about science, and reveal linguistic miracles that even the greatest poets and scholars have bowed before in absolute surrender. These are not myths or legends. These are documented facts, preserved testimonies, and undeniable realities about the Quran that will leave you in awe of the divine wisdom contained within its pages. From the dusty streets of 7th century Makkah to the cutting-edge laboratories of modern science, from the tongues of illiterate desert Arabs to the lips of Nobel Prize winners, the Quran has remained unchanged, unchallenged in its preservation, and unmatched in its impact on human civilization. Prepare yourself, because once you understand these truths, you will never look at this sacred text the same way again. Before we begin this incredible journey through 100 astounding facts, I want to ask you, dear viewer, where are you watching this from right now? Are you in Jakarta, London, Cairo, New York, or perhaps somewhere I have never even imagined? Drop your location in the comments below, because I genuinely want to know how far this message is reaching across the globe. And if you have not yet subscribed to this channel, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button right now and join our growing community of seekers who are dedicated to understanding the depths of Islamic knowledge and the miracles of the Quran. Your support means everything, and together we are building something truly special here. Let us begin with the foundation, the very essence of what makes the Quran unique among all books that have ever existed or will ever exist on this earth. The Quran was revealed over 23 years, not all at once, but in carefully measured portions that addressed the immediate needs of the Muslim community, answered specific questions, and guided the believers through every challenge they faced. This gradual revelation was itself a mercy from Allah, allowing hearts to absorb the message, minds to comprehend the wisdom, and souls to transform gradually, rather than being overwhelmed by the enormity of divine guidance all at once. The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, was 40 years old when he received the first revelation in the cave of Hira, a moment that would change the course of human history forever. The angel Jibril appeared to him and commanded him to read, and though the Prophet could not read or write, the words of Allah flowed through him with such power and beauty that even his enemies, the masters of Arabic poetry and eloquence, stood speechless before its magnificence. This was a man who had never composed a single line of poetry, never studied under any teacher, never learned the art of rhetoric, yet he brought forth words that contained layers upon layers of meaning, linguistic structures that defied human composition, and knowledge of past and future events that he could not possibly have known. The Quran itself challenges humanity in Surah Al-Baqarah, saying that if you are in doubt about what has been revealed to our servant, then produce one chapter like it, and call upon your witnesses besides Allah if you are truthful. This challenge has stood for 1400 years, and not a single person, not the most eloquent poet, not the most brilliant scholar, not the most advanced artificial intelligence, has ever been able to produce even a single chapter that matches the Quran in its depth, beauty, coherence, and miraculous nature. The Quran contains exactly 114 chapters, known as surahs, ranging from the shortest, which has only 3 verses, to the longest, which contains 286 verses. These surahs are not arranged chronologically by revelation, but by divine instruction, creating a structure that serves multiple purposes of memorization, recitation, and thematic coherence that scholars have studied for centuries without exhausting its wisdom. Within these chapters are 6,236 verses, though different methods of counting may yield slightly different numbers, all falling within a very narrow range that demonstrates the meticulous care with which the Quran has been preserved. Every single letter, every vowel mark, every pause and stop has been preserved exactly as it was revealed, transmitted through an unbroken chain of memorizers from the Prophet Muhammad himself down to our present day. This is not merely a claim, but a historical reality that can be verified through manuscripts, through the testimony of thousands of independent transmission chains, and through the living tradition of millions of Muslims who have memorized the entire Quran word for word, letter for letter, even children as young as 5 or 6 years old, who cannot yet read or write in their own language, but have committed the entire Arabic Quran to memory with perfect accuracy. No other book in human history can make this claim of preservation. Not the Torah, not the Gospel, not the works of Plato or Aristotle, not the greatest literary masterpieces of any civilization, because the Quran alone has been protected by Allah himself, who says in Surah Al-Hijr that indeed it is we who sent down the Quran, and indeed we will be its guardian. The very first word revealed from the Quran was Iqra, which means read or recite, and this is profoundly significant because Islam came with a message of knowledge, learning, and intellectual enlightenment at a time when the Arabian Peninsula was steeped in ignorance, superstition, and tribal barbarism. The Quran elevated literacy, encouraged observation of the natural world, and commanded believers to reflect, ponder, and think about the signs of Allah in creation, effectively launching the greatest educational and scientific revolution the world had ever seen. The Quran mentions the word knowledge and its derivatives more than 800 times, making it clear that seeking knowledge is not just recommended, but is an essential part of faith itself. The Prophet Muhammad said in an authentic hadith that seeking knowledge is obligatory upon every Muslim, man and woman, and he said that the superiority of the scholar over the worshipper is like the superiority of the full moon over all the stars, emphasizing that intellectual pursuit and spiritual development must go hand in hand. This emphasis on knowledge led to the Islamic Golden Age, a period spanning several centuries where Muslim scholars made groundbreaking contributions to mathematics, astronomy, medicine, chemistry, physics, philosophy, and countless other fields, building upon the Quranic worldview that the universe operates according to precise laws established by the Creator, and that understanding these laws is a form of worship. Within the pages of the Quran are embedded scientific facts that were completely unknown to 7th century Arabia. Information about embryology, astronomy, geology, oceanography, and the natural world that could only have been known through divine revelation. In Surah Al-Mu'minun, Allah describes the stages of human embryonic development with such precision that modern embryologists have expressed amazement at the accuracy of these descriptions, made 14 centuries before the invention of microscopes or any medical technology that could observe the developing fetus. The Quran speaks of the creation of humans from a drop of mixed fluids, then describes the formation of a clinging clot, then a lump of flesh, then bones which are then clothed with flesh, stages that correspond exactly to modern embryological understanding of how human development occurs in the womb. Professor Keith Moore, who was one of the world's most prominent embryologists and the author of a medical textbook used in universities worldwide, studied these Quranic verses and testified that the Quran contains descriptions of the human embryo that could not possibly have been known in the 7th century, stating that the only reasonable explanation is that Muhammad was a messenger receiving revelation from God. The Quran describes the barrier between fresh and salt water in Surah Ar-Rahman, mentioning that the two seas meet but there is a barrier between them which they do not transgress, a phenomenon that was only discovered by modern oceanography, which revealed that when rivers meet oceans, there exists a zone where the waters remain distinct due to differences in density, salinity, and temperature, creating a barrier that prevents immediate mixing. The Quran mentions in Surah Ad-Dariyat that the heavens were created and continue to expand, a fact that was only discovered in the 20th century through astronomical observations that revealed the universe is indeed expanding, exactly as the Quran stated 1400 years ago, when everyone believed the universe was static and unchanging. The linguistic miracle of the Quran cannot be overstated, because Arabic is not merely a language, but a sophisticated system of communication with roots, patterns, and structures that allow for incredible depth of meaning in very few words. The Quran uses a classical Arabic that was at the peak of eloquence and sophistication, yet it transcends the poetry and prose of that era by introducing new linguistic structures, rhetorical devices, and patterns of speech that had never been used before and have never been replicated since. One of the most stunning aspects of Quranic Arabic is its mathematical precision, where letters, words, and phrases are arranged in patterns that reveal numerical relationships that could not possibly be the result of human composition. The Quran uses words with multiple layers of meaning, where a single word can have 5, 10, or even 20 different interpretations that are all valid and all complement each other, creating a text that can be read at surface level by a child, yet contains depths that the greatest scholars spend entire lifetimes exploring without reaching the bottom. When you recite the Quran in Arabic, even if you do not understand the meaning, there is a rhythmic beauty, a melodious flow, and an emotional impact that moves the heart in ways that cannot be explained through linguistics alone, because this is the speech of Allah, and His speech carries a power that penetrates directly into the soul. The Quran challenges the eloquent Arabs by using their own language at a level they could never achieve, employing rhetorical techniques like alternation between narrative and direct address, transitions between past and future tense within single verses, and the use of sound patterns that reinforce meaning, all working together to create an experience that is simultaneously intellectual, emotional, and spiritual. The preservation of the Quran is perhaps its greatest miracle, because while other scriptures have been lost, altered, translated through multiple languages losing their original meaning, and corrupted through human interference, the Quran stands today exactly as it was revealed. Within years of the Prophet's death, the complete Quran was compiled into a single book under the supervision of Abu Bakr, the first caliph, and then standardized under Uthman, the third caliph, who sent copies to major cities of the Muslim world and ordered all other variant manuscripts to be destroyed to prevent any future corruption or confusion. This might sound authoritarian, but it was actually a brilliant preservation strategy, because it eliminated any possibility of regional variations developing over time, ensuring that every Muslim from Spain to China would be reciting the exact same Quran word for word. But the real genius of Quranic preservation was not just written manuscripts, but the oral tradition of memorization, where hundreds of companions of the Prophet had memorized the entire Quran during his lifetime, and they taught it to thousands of students, who taught it to tens of thousands, creating an unbroken chain of transmission that continues to this day. If somehow every written copy of the Quran in the world was destroyed tomorrow, it could be perfectly reconstructed from the memories of millions of Muslims who have committed it to heart, a level of preservation that is absolutely unprecedented in human history. Ancient manuscripts of the Quran have been discovered, including some that date back to within 20 years of the Prophet's death, and when these manuscripts are compared to the Quran we recite today, they are identical, proving beyond any doubt that not a single word, not a single letter, has been changed across 14 centuries of transmission. The Quran speaks directly to the human heart about matters of faith, purpose, morality, and the relationship between the Creator and His creation in ways that resonate across all cultures, languages, and time periods. It addresses the fundamental questions that have troubled humanity since the beginning. Why do we exist? What happens after death? How should we live? What is justice? What is the meaning of suffering? The Quran provides answers that are both intellectually satisfying and spiritually nourishing, teaching that humans were created to worship Allah, that this life is a test whose results determine eternal destiny, that morality is not subjective but is grounded in divine commandments, and that suffering and hardship are opportunities for spiritual growth and purification. The concept of Tawhid, the absolute oneness of Allah, is the central theme running through every page of the Quran, emphasized and re-emphasized in countless verses that destroy any notion of polytheism, trinity, or the worship of anything or anyone besides the one true God. Allah describes himself in the Quran with 99 beautiful names that reveal different aspects of his nature. He is Ar-Rahman, the most merciful, Ar-Rahim, the especially merciful, Al-Malik, the king, Al-Qudus, the pure, As-Salam, the source of peace, Al-Alim, the all-knowing, Al-Hakim, the most wise, and dozens more. Each name opening a window into understanding the divine, and each name serving as a means through which believers can call upon their Lord and develop their relationship with Him. The Quran contains stories of previous prophets and nations that serve as lessons, warnings, and sources of inspiration for believers throughout the ages. The story of Adam and how he was created by Allah, honored by the angels, deceived by Satan, but then forgiven and guided after his repentance, establishing the pattern of human existence as a journey from innocence to trial to redemption through sincere turning back to the Creator. The story of Nuh, who spent 950 years calling his people to the worship of one God, enduring their mockery and rejection, building the ark by divine command, and being saved along with the believers, while the disbelievers were destroyed in the flood, teaching us that truth will always prevail, even if it takes centuries, and even if the righteous seem to be a small minority surrounded by overwhelming opposition. The story of Ibrahim, the friend of Allah, who challenged the idol worship of his father and his people, who was thrown into a fire that became cool and safe by Allah's command, who was willing to sacrifice his own son in obedience to God's command, and who built the Kaaba in Mecca as the first house established for the worship of Allah on earth. The story of Musa, who was raised in the palace of Pharaoh, who fled after killing a man, who received prophethood at the burning bush, who confronted the tyrant Pharaoh with miracles and warnings, who led the children of Israel out of slavery, and who received the Torah on Mount Sinai, all recounted in the Quran with details that emphasize the struggle between truth and falsehood, between humility before God and arrogant rebellion against Him. The story of Isa, known as Jesus, who was born miraculously to the Virgin Maryam, who spoke from the cradle defending his mother's honor, who performed miracles by Allah's permission, including healing the blind and the leper and raising the dead, but who never claimed divinity for himself, and who will return before the end of time to break the cross, kill the swine, and establish the truth that he was a servant and messenger of Allah, not the Son of God as some have falsely claimed. The Quran establishes a complete way of life that governs not just ritual worship, but every aspect of human existence, from personal hygiene to international relations, from business transactions to family law, from dietary restrictions to rules of warfare. It commands the 5 daily prayers as pillars that structure the believer's day around remembrance of Allah, beginning with Fajr before sunrise, continuing through Duha at midday, Asr in the afternoon, Maghrib at sunset, and Isha at night, creating a rhythm of worship that keeps the heart connected to its Creator and prevents the soul from becoming completely absorbed in worldly distractions. It mandates the paying of zakat, a purifying charity that redistributes wealth from the rich to the poor, ensuring that no Muslim goes hungry while another lives in luxury, creating a social safety net based not on government coercion, but on the willing obedience of those who recognize that their wealth is a trust from Allah and that the poor have a right to share in it. It prescribes the fast of Ramadan, a month-long training program in self-discipline, empathy for the hungry, and spiritual rejuvenation, where believers abstain from food, drink, and marital relations from dawn to sunset, learning to control their desires and to appreciate the countless blessings that they normally take for granted. It makes the pilgrimage to Makkah, the Hajj, an obligation once in a lifetime for those who are physically and financially able, bringing together millions of Muslims from every race, language, and social class, all wearing simple white garments, all performing the same rituals, all equal before Allah, in a powerful demonstration of the universal brotherhood of Islam that transcends all worldly divisions and hierarchies. The Quran speaks extensively about the unseen world, about angels created from light who never disobey Allah and who carry out specific functions in the cosmic order, about jinn created from smokeless fire, who have free will like humans and who will be judged like humans, about Satan, who was originally among the righteous, but who became cursed due to his arrogance and refusal to prostrate to Adam, and who now dedicates himself to leading humanity astray until the day of judgment. It describes paradise in vivid detail as gardens beneath which rivers flow, with palaces of gold and silver, with fruits and meats of every kind, with rivers of milk and honey and wine that does not intoxicate, with beautiful companions, with eternal youth and perfect health, with the ultimate pleasure being the ability to see Allah's noble face, a reward that makes all earthly pleasures pale into insignificance. It describes hell with equally vivid and terrifying imagery as a place of fire whose fuel is people and stones, where the disbelievers and the hypocrites and the evildoers will dwell eternally, where their skins will be replaced each time they are burned so they can continue to feel the punishment, where they will cry out for relief but will be told to remain in disgrace and not to plead for rescue, where they will regret their choices and wish they could return to the world to do righteous deeds, but it will be too late because the time for action has passed and now is only the time for recompense. These descriptions are not meant to be metaphorical or symbolic, but are real destinations awaiting every human soul after death. And the Quran emphasizes this reality again and again to shake people out of their heedlessness and to make them take seriously the purpose of their existence and the accountability that awaits them. The Quran contains prophecies about future events that came true exactly as predicted, proving that its source could only be the one who knows the seen and the unseen, the past and the future, the open and the hidden. In Surah Ar-Rum, the Quran predicted that the Romans, who had just been defeated by the Persians in a crushing loss that seemed to mark the end of their empire, would be victorious again within a few years. A prediction that seemed impossible at the time it was made, but which came true exactly as the Quran said, when the Romans achieved a decisive victory within less than a decade. The Quran predicted that the Muslims would return to Makkah and enter the sacred mosque in safety, with heads shaved and hair shortened, not fearing anyone, at a time when the Muslims were in exile in Medina, and their return seemed like an impossible dream. Yet within a few years they entered Makkah peacefully in the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, and then conquered it permanently without bloodshed. The Quran predicted that Islam would spread throughout the world, that it would dominate over all other religions even if the disbelievers hate it, a prediction that seemed absurd when Muslims were a persecuted minority in Makkah, but which has been fulfilled as Islam has become the fastest growing religion in the world, with nearly 2 billion followers and growing every single day. The Quran contains prophecies about the end times, about the signs that will precede the day of judgment, including the appearance of the Dajjal or Antichrist, the return of Prophet Isa, the emergence of Gog and Magog, the rising of the sun from the west, and other major signs that will signal the approach of the final hour when all of creation will be destroyed and then resurrected for judgment. The impact of the Quran on world civilization is impossible to overstate, because it transformed ignorant desert tribes into a sophisticated empire that valued learning, justice, and human dignity in ways that were revolutionary for their time and remain relevant for ours. Within 100 years of the Prophet's death, the Islamic Empire stretched from Spain to China, not primarily through military conquest, but through the appeal of the Quranic message of equality before God, of justice for all, regardless of race or class, of the dignity of every human being as the honored creation of Allah. The Quran's emphasis on knowledge led Muslims to translate and preserve the works of Greek philosophers and scientists that would otherwise have been lost, to build the greatest libraries the world had ever seen in cities like Baghdad and Cordoba, to establish universities and hospitals and observatories, and to make breakthrough discoveries in every field of human knowledge. Muslim mathematicians invented algebra and made crucial developments in trigonometry and geometry. Muslim astronomers mapped the stars and calculated the movements of planets with stunning accuracy. Muslim physicians wrote medical textbooks that were used in Europe for centuries. Muslim chemists laid the foundations for modern chemistry, and Muslim philosophers grappled with questions of existence, knowledge, and ethics in ways that influenced European thought during the Renaissance and Enlightenment. All of this intellectual activity was rooted in the Quranic worldview that the universe is orderly and comprehensible, that knowledge is a form of worship, that humans have the capacity and the duty to understand the world around them, and that reason and revelation are complementary rather than contradictory. The Quran addresses women with a dignity and respect that was absolutely revolutionary in 7th century Arabia, and that remains more progressive than many modern societies when properly understood and applied. Before Islam, women in Arabia were treated as property, could be inherited like possessions, had no right to own property or to refuse marriage, were sometimes buried alive as infants if their fathers wanted sons, and were generally considered inferior beings with no legal or social standing. The Quran abolished all of these practices, declaring that women and men are equal in their essential humanity, that both will be judged by the same moral standards, that both have souls that will be held accountable, and that both have rights and responsibilities before Allah. The Quran gave women the right to own and inherit property, to conduct business, to keep their own wealth separate from their husbands, to initiate divorce in certain circumstances, to refuse marriage proposals, to receive education, and to participate in social and religious life. The Quran commands men to treat women with kindness and justice, specifically stating that men who marry should either keep their wives with good treatment or release them with kindness, and warning that Allah does not like those who are arrogant or boastful in their dealings with women. The verse about men being protectors and maintainers of women is often misunderstood as establishing male superiority, but it actually establishes male responsibility to provide for and protect women, a responsibility that comes with accountability before Allah, and that does not diminish the spiritual equality or the human dignity of women in any way. The most honored woman in all of creation, according to the Quran, is Maryam, the mother of Isa, who has an entire chapter named after her, and who is praised for her piety, her chastity, her devotion to Allah, and her unwavering faith, even when facing the most difficult trials. The Quran establishes principles of justice and human rights that were centuries ahead of their time, and that remain the foundation for a just and compassionate society. It commands that justice be upheld, even if it goes against your own interests or the interests of your family and community, stating clearly that you should stand firmly for justice as witnesses for Allah, even if it is against yourselves or your parents or your relatives. It prohibits all forms of oppression and exploitation, warning that Allah does not love the oppressors and that the oppressed will have their rights restored on the Day of Judgment, even if justice was denied to them in this world. It establishes the principle of individual responsibility, that no soul bears the burden of another, that children are not punished for their parents' sins nor parents for their children's sins, that each person will be held accountable only for their own choices and actions. It prohibits racism and tribalism, declaring in Surah Al-Hujurat that all humans were created from a single male and female, that you have been made into nations and tribes so you may know one another, and that the most honored among you in the sight of Allah is the one who is most righteous, not the one who belongs to a particular race or tribe or social class. It establishes the sanctity of human life, stating that whoever kills an innocent person, it is as if they have killed all of humanity, and whoever saves a life, it is as if they have saved all of humanity, making murder one of the gravest sins and the protection of innocent life one of the highest priorities. It prohibits theft, adultery, lying, cheating, consuming intoxicants, gambling, and all forms of corruption, not through arbitrary rules, but through principles that protect individuals and society from harm and that promote dignity, trust, and moral excellence. The Quran speaks about wealth and economics in ways that establish a balanced system that encourages productivity while preventing exploitation and ensuring that wealth circulates throughout society rather than concentrating in the hands of a few. It permits trade and business while prohibiting interest-based transactions, recognizing that interest creates a system where the rich get richer without working while the poor get poorer despite working, and that this leads to social instability, inequality, and injustice. It commands that business dealings be conducted honestly, with clear contracts, with witnesses when necessary, with accurate weights and measures, and with mutual consent, warning that those who cheat in their transactions will face severe punishment in the hereafter. It prohibits hoarding wealth, commanding instead that wealth be spent in the way of Allah through charity, through supporting family members, through contributing to community projects, and through investing in productive enterprises that benefit society. It establishes the principle of wealth as a trust from Allah rather than absolute personal property, meaning that the wealthy are stewards who will be held accountable for how they earned their money and how they spent it, making the pursuit of wealth a potentially noble endeavor if done through lawful means and for righteous purposes, but a source of destruction if pursued through greed, exploitation, and selfishness. It describes the ideal economic actors as those who are generous in prosperity, patient in adversity, who fulfill their promises, who are truthful in their dealings, and who remember that the ultimate success is not measured in the size of their bank accounts, but in the purity of their hearts and the goodness of their deeds. The Quran provides detailed guidance about family life, recognizing the family as the fundamental building block of society and establishing rights and responsibilities that protect every family member and promote harmony, stability, and mutual love and mercy. It begins with the relationship between husband and wife, describing them as garments for one another, a beautiful metaphor indicating that they provide covering, protection, warmth, and beauty to each other, and that they are intimate, close, and essential to each other's well-being. It commands that marriage be based on mutual consent, that the groom provide a dowry to the bride as her personal property, that both spouses treat each other with kindness and consideration, and that when difficulties arise, they should either reconcile with good treatment or separate with dignity and fairness. It establishes the rights of children to be cared for, nurtured, educated, and treated with compassion, while also commanding children to honor and obey their parents, especially in their old age, saying that you should not even say "uff" to them in irritation, but should speak to them words of respect and make supplication for mercy for them as they raised you when you were small. It addresses the difficult issue of inheritance with precise mathematical formulas that ensure fair distribution of wealth across family members, giving shares to parents, spouses, children, and sometimes other relatives, based on principles that balance needs, relationships, and responsibilities. It recognizes that family conflicts will occur and provides mechanisms for resolution, including mediation, arbitration, and when necessary, dissolution of marriage, always emphasizing that the goal is justice and the preservation of human dignity, even when relationships cannot be maintained. The Quran speaks about the natural world as a book of signs pointing to the Creator, encouraging believers to observe, reflect, and learn from the patterns and phenomena they see around them. It mentions the creation of the heavens and the earth, the alternation of night and day, the movement of the sun and moon in precise orbits, the rain that falls and brings dead land back to life, the ships that sail through the seas, the winds that carry clouds, and countless other natural phenomena, always asking, will you not reflect? Will you not understand? Will you not take heed? It describes animals and plants as communities like human communities, each with their own forms of communication, organization, and purpose, deserving of respect and kind treatment from humans who have been given authority over the earth, but not the right to destroy or abuse it. It establishes environmental stewardship as a religious duty, commanding that humans not spread corruption in the earth, that they be moderate in their use of resources, and that they remember they will be held accountable for how they treated the creation that Allah has entrusted to their care. It speaks of the intricate balance in nature, the precise measurements of everything from the orbits of planets to the structure of atoms, the interconnection of ecosystems, and the harmony that exists when creation follows the natural order established by the Creator, contrasting this with the chaos and destruction that results when humans rebel against divine guidance and pursue their desires without moral constraints. The recitation of the Quran is itself an act of worship that brings immense spiritual benefits and blessings to those who engage in it regularly. The Prophet Muhammad said that whoever recites one letter from the Book of Allah will receive one good deed, and one good deed is multiplied by 10, so that by reciting Alif Lam Mim, which is 3 letters, you earn 30 good deeds, a reward that makes even the simple act of reading the Quran an incredibly valuable spiritual investment. He said that the one who is skilled in reciting the Quran will be with the noble and righteous scribes in paradise, while the one who struggles to recite it, making mistakes and finding it difficult, will receive 2 rewards, one for the recitation and one for the effort and struggle. The Quran is meant to be recited with proper pronunciation and rules of tajweed, not rushed through carelessly but savored and reflected upon, with the heart present and the mind engaged, because it is not meant to be merely sounds that pass through the tongue, but divine words that penetrate the soul and transform the character. There is a healing power in the Quran that goes beyond what modern medicine can explain, where verses recited over the sick can bring relief and cure, where the words of Allah can calm anxious hearts, strengthen weak faith, and bring peace to troubled souls, because this is the speech of the Creator, who knows His creation better than they know themselves, and who has sent down this book as guidance and mercy for those who believe. The Quran addresses skeptics, critics, and disbelievers with powerful arguments that appeal to reason, evidence, and the innate human recognition of truth. It asks those who worship false gods whether those gods can create anything or are themselves created, whether they can hear prayers or answer them, whether they can benefit their worshippers or harm their enemies, exposing the absurdity of worshipping powerless objects while rejecting the worship of the all-powerful Creator. It challenges materialists who believe life is merely random chance by pointing to the order, precision, and purpose evident in every aspect of creation, from the structure of DNA to the laws of physics, asking whether all of this could possibly have come about by accident without an intelligent designer. It addresses those who deny resurrection and the afterlife by reminding them that the one who created them the first time is certainly capable of recreating them, and by pointing out that the universal human sense of justice demands an afterlife where the oppressor is punished and the oppressed is vindicated, because otherwise existence would be meaningless and cruel. It confronts hypocrites who claim faith but whose hearts are not truly submitted to Allah, describing their condition as a sickness, warning that they will be in the lowest depths of the fire, and exposing their deception, their double dealing, and their corruption that undermines the Muslim community from within. Yet even in its stern warnings and harsh condemnations of disbelief and hypocrisy, the Quran always leaves the door of repentance open, always reminds people that Allah's mercy is vast, and always emphasizes that guidance is a gift from Allah that can come to anyone who sincerely seeks it with humility and openness. The Quran contains what can only be described as literary miracles in its use of sound, rhythm, and structure that work together to create an experience that is simultaneously aesthetic, intellectual, and spiritual. The placement of words creates sound patterns that echo and reinforce the meaning, so that verses about paradise flow smoothly and musically, while verses about hell are harsh and jarring, creating an auditory experience that supports the content. The use of repeated phrases and refrains creates a hypnotic effect that makes the Quran easy to memorize despite its length and complexity, with certain phrases like, "Which of the favors of your Lord will you deny?" repeated dozens of times in a single chapter, building rhythmic momentum and emotional intensity. The sudden shifts in perspective, tense, and addressee create dramatic effects that keep the listener engaged and prevent monotony. Moving from third person to second person to first person, from past to present to future, from addressing believers to addressing the Prophet, to addressing all of humanity, all within the space of a few verses. The use of oaths, where Allah swears by the sun, by the moon, by the night, by the fig, by time itself, creates emphasis and draws attention to the importance of what follows, while also pointing to the significance of these created things as signs of the Creator. The parallel structures and symmetries found throughout the Quran, where stories are told from different angles, themes are developed across multiple chapters, and concepts are presented in complementary pairs, create a coherence and unity that is remarkable in a text revealed over 23 years in response to various situations and events. The Quran provides comprehensive guidance about dealing with adversity, hardship, and the trials that inevitably come to every human being in this temporary worldly life. It teaches that trials are not punishments, but tests that distinguish the sincere from the hypocritical, the patient from the impatient, the grateful from the ungrateful, as stated in Surah Al-Ankabut, that Allah does not leave people alone just because they say they believe, but He tests them so that He will surely make evident those who are truthful and make evident the liars. It promises that with every hardship comes ease, that Allah does not burden any soul beyond its capacity, and that those who remain patient and put their trust in Allah will find that their difficulties become sources of purification, spiritual growth, and ultimately reward in both this life and the hereafter. It provides the example of Prophet Ayub, who suffered the loss of his wealth, his health, and his children, yet never complained against Allah, never lost faith, never despaired of mercy, and was eventually restored to health and prosperity as a reward for his patience and steadfast faith. It teaches that grief, sadness, and pain are natural human emotions that should not be suppressed, but should be expressed in healthy ways while maintaining faith in Allah's wisdom, justice, and mercy. Because even the Prophet Muhammad wept at the death of his son and said that the eyes shed tears, the heart grieves, but we do not say anything that displeases our Lord. It emphasizes that true reliance on Allah does not mean passively accepting whatever happens, but rather doing everything in your power to change your situation while recognizing that the ultimate outcome is in Allah's hands. As the Prophet said, "Tie your camel and then put your trust in Allah," combining practical effort with spiritual dependence. The concept of the straight path that runs throughout the Quran represents the balanced middle way that Islam establishes between extremes of belief and practice. It is the path between materialistic atheism that denies any spiritual reality and superstitious mysticism that abandons reason and evidence, affirming instead that both the material and spiritual realms are real and that humans must attend to both. It is the path between harsh asceticism that forbids all worldly pleasures and hedonistic indulgence that pursues pleasure as the ultimate goal, teaching instead that pleasures are permitted and even encouraged within the boundaries set by Allah, but must never become the purpose of existence. It is the path between individual freedom that recognizes no limits or responsibilities and collective tyranny that crushes individual conscience and dignity, establishing instead a society where individuals have rights and freedoms, but also duties toward their Creator and their community. It is the path between stagnant traditionalism that rejects all change and rootless modernism that abandons all tradition, preserving instead the eternal principles while allowing for adaptation in matters of implementation and application. It is the path between passive fatalism that attributes everything to divine decree while denying human free will and arrogant humanism that attributes everything to human will while denying divine sovereignty, teaching instead that Allah has ultimate control, but has given humans the freedom to choose between right and wrong, and will hold them accountable for those choices. The Quran transforms those who truly internalize its message, not just intellectually accepting its teachings, but allowing those teachings to reshape their character, their priorities, their relationships, and their entire worldview. The companions of the Prophet provide the clearest example of this transformation. From people who buried their daughters alive, to people who protected and honored women, from people who drank alcohol and gambled, to people who controlled their desires and invested their resources wisely, from people divided by tribal hatred to people united in brotherhood that transcended all racial and ethnic boundaries. This transformation was not superficial or temporary, but deep and lasting, creating a generation that changed the world through their commitment to justice, their adherence to moral principles, their courage in the face of adversity, and their unwavering faith in Allah even when facing persecution, exile, and death. The Quran achieved this transformation not through coercion or indoctrination, but through appealing to human reason, conscience, and the innate recognition of truth that exists in every human heart, presenting arguments, evidence, and examples that convince the mind while inspiring the soul. When someone truly lives by the Quran, others can see the difference in their honesty, their integrity, their compassion, their patience, their generosity, and their peace of mind that comes from having a clear purpose and a firm foundation that does not shake with every passing trend or temporary difficulty. This is why the Prophet's wife, Aisha, when asked about his character, said that his character was the Quran, meaning that he was a living embodiment of its teachings, a walking Quran whose words and deeds perfectly reflected the divine guidance he had received. As we reach the end of this journey through 100 facts about the Quran, we realize that we have only scratched the surface of its infinite depths, only glimpsed a few rays of its brilliant light, only tasted a few drops from its boundless ocean of wisdom. The Quran is not merely a book to be studied academically or appreciated aesthetically, but a guide to be followed, a message to be implemented, a rope to be grasped that connects earth to heaven and the human heart to its creator. Every fact we have explored today points to the same undeniable conclusion. This book could not possibly be the work of a human being, no matter how intelligent or eloquent, because it contains knowledge that was unknowable in the 7th century. It has been preserved with a precision that is unprecedented in human history. It transforms lives in ways that no human composition can match, and it continues to guide, inspire, and challenge humanity 1400 years after its revelation. The question is not whether the Quran is divine revelation, because the evidence is overwhelming and the arguments are conclusive, but rather what you will do with this knowledge, how you will respond to this message, whether you will allow these words to penetrate your heart and change your life, or whether you will turn away and continue in heedlessness. Allah says in the Quran that this is a blessed book, which we have revealed to you so they might reflect upon its verses, and so those of understanding would be reminded. So reflect upon what you have learned today, ponder the signs and miracles of the Quran, and remember that you will stand before Allah on a day when wealth and children will not benefit anyone except the one who comes with a sound heart. May Allah make us among those who believe in the Quran, who act upon its teachings, who memorize its verses, who understand its meanings, and who are granted intercession by it on the Day of Judgment.